And we're recording. Welcome and welcome back to the Enolve podcast, where we talk about solving problems to make the world a better place. This is a very special edition of the Enolve podcast because today will be the first time ever that we're doing a live demonstration of the Enolve app. And to make it happen with me, I couldn't have asked for a better collaborator. Our guest today is Mina Raver, who's a visionary, a futurist, and an activator. She's the leader of the 2K Days project, which is a community of change makers focused on making the world a better place through systemic transformations at a social level. Mina, thank you so much for coming on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and your background and how you got to the place where you are today?
Sure. Okay. Well, I guess I could start with saying that I have been two things as long as I can remember, an activist and an entrepreneur. At about 9 or 10 years old, I started my first business. So I got my first experiences knocking on doors, both to warn people about climate change and to ask if I could mow their lawns. And so from there on, just realizing going from activism into politics, I ran for Congress here in the US and learned a lot of things that way. And alongside that, also building up my businesses, going from service-based to product-based to idea-based. Those two veins evolved together into Tysive Inc. and the 2K Days project, where I can tell you, based on experience and beyond the shadow of a doubt, there is only one system that we have that is friendly to change, and it's the market. We will not be able to make significant change through protest alone. Great ideas do not sway comfortable minds, but if we can create systems that are robust enough to become institutional alternatives, we can take those directly to the people, prove their worth directly to the people, and expand them until debate is no longer an option.
Love it. Love it. That is solid. And that's why I really love talking to you and being part of your project as well, because you know what you talk here about is not being in some kind of delusion that's not really, that's just wasting energy and wasting everybody's time and yelling against something where nothing ever changes. But instead, we want to take those ideas and turn them into real systems that really work for people and help them, achieve what they want to achieve and live the life how they want to live it, and not be in those, this unfavorable, undesirable situations, right? Right. And it's funny, you talk about being an entrepreneur. You also told me that you have a 10-year-old who's had a birthday today. And so that's yes. Funny. You said that's when you started. Are your kids into entrepreneurship at all?
A little bit, but you know what? It looks different in the age of people who have never lived without touch screens. So their idea of entrepreneurship comes from Awesome Games Done Quick, AGDQ. They're aspiring speedrunners.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I've heard a lot of kids that are really into that world, yeah. And it's a whole new market that's emerging too. It's quite fascinating. All right, but let's talk about how you usually help people through the challenges that they face when it comes to making a change. And like I said, we want to do a demonstration here of the Enolve app. So what I'm going to do right now, I'll share my screen over here. And hopefully I'll do everything correct while we're on the air. Perfect. So we're here on the Enolve app. And what I'm going to do for us right now is to create a sphere. It's going to be a collaboration space for us. Now, for now, I'm not going to make it public. I'm going to keep it private. And I'll call it Idea to Vision with Mina. That's what the name of our sphere is for right now. And I'm just going to say, talk about transformation. We can always change that later, but I'm going to create the sphere right now. And now I have a link, and I'm going to send this link over to you on Zoom, and then you can join in there. So I just have to find my things here. Oh, that's awkward on the middle of the air of the recording, messing with Zoom here, but there it is. You should have the link now. Let me know when you get it. And then there's a button for you where you can request to join. And I'll go over here, managing my sphere. Oh, and I see your request came already through, so I approve you. And I didn't ask you about that, but you know how to refresh your browser? Hit F5 or hit the little circle arrow up here. Perfect. So that's the only thing we have to do right now. It's still in beta, the app, so it's not perfect yet. But basically, this is it. Now, what we want to do is we want to create those entries here. And usually, you know, if you were on my podcast right now, like you are, I would ask you, what are some of the challenges that people are facing before they come seeking your advice, before you help them out? What is the situation like? You know, what are their problems, their challenges, their difficulties? And why don't you do that? Tell me about it. But also at the same time, why don't you create a new entry for this problem, give it a quick title and then a short description, and just post it here in our sphere. We want to kind of focus on 2 to 3 of the, you know, symptom level problems that people will experience, where it's like this, the negative consequences, the pain points, that's what's going on for me. What can you tell me about it?
So I've been working with people one-on-one to help them build systemic alternative businesses for about 5 years now. And when they first come to me, they come to me specifically for the way that I break up and communicate ideas. So the first problem that people have, here we go, is they have an idea, but ideas are raw, intangible. They can get people excited, but they can't help people organize, and they definitely can't direct action. So the first step to creating a systemic alternative business is turning your very intangible idea or ideas into a basis for your vision. Vision is still intangible, but it's a lot more easily communicated. It has all of the foundations of physicality. The next step is turning it into a system, but sticking right here with this idea, turning an idea into a vision. That's the first problem that you have to overcome. It's where people get stuck first. And a lot of people think that once they have an idea, then it's time to protest. It's time to talk about it. You absolutely can, you should, because fleshing out that idea is how you can turn it into a vision. It's one major way you can turn it into a vision. But once you can solidify that into a vision is something that you can communicate to others based on their experiences.
That's really good stuff. That's really interesting. And so that's the thing about, you know, solving problems is you mentioned communication a lot and intangibility. So yeah, exactly. Sometimes we just have these abstract concepts floating in our mind, right? And you posted this problem here. Well, the problem is I have an idea, but it's intangible and difficult. So great description there. I like it. Now you probably see something similar here where you actually see it on the screen and everything. And we're not going to focus on going into the details of solving it quite yet. Instead, I'm going to head back to the vision sphere, and I'm actually going to make another entry based on something you said here. And it sounded like intangible things are difficult to communicate. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Difficult to communicate. And so for my description, I'm going to say we need to put words on concepts.
Yes. And now the important thing there is your audience. You understanding something is very different from your ability to communicate something. You have to be able to organize things based on others' experiences. That's where communication breaks down.
That's a good point. So it really matters who you're talking to. Interesting. Right. Now, and again, we're talking about concepts and everything. And we said, okay, let's focus on the symptoms and the kind of pain points that are going on. So we said, okay, the pain point is it's intangible and difficult. We said intangible ideas are difficult to communicate. I can totally not type while I'm talking, actually. So we'll have an edit feature here soon as well, where of course you can fix your typos and all of that. And so what's one more kind of symptom pain point problem that happens as a result of that? And then what we do as a final step here, we're going to summarize them or regroup, recategorize those things that we talked about. So it's intangibility, it's communication. And what's another problem with that? I mean, like, why isn't that? Okay, so who cares? I have an idea and I can't communicate it. Is that the end of the world, or what is actually the negative consequence here?
It can be the end of the world, because the problem with not being able to communicate your ideas and not understanding that it's because you can't communicate your ideas, there's this self-isolationist stage where people who have great ideas start to worry that they are misunderstood. Not that their idea is misunderstood, but that they are misunderstood. And now there's an ethos aspect and an ego aspect of that, where the ethos aspect can cause, variability and depression and make you self-isolate and not speak your idea. And the ego response to that can be, oh, I'm so smart that all of these dumb people just can't understand me. And so an idea dies in the mind of its initiator.
Nice. That's a great insight. And I'm thinking about that through how we connect these ideas here. So would you say what you just described to me is a symptom level pain point problem? So kind of like, okay, I feel depressed and isolated. I think that would be a good one. Why don't you do me a favor here and put that also onto our app, kind of what you just described, feeling depressed and isolated. And you just did a thing where you actually went deeper into the root causes, where I think we might be able to hear some good solutions from you there.
Sure, I'm looking in here and I think I click. Oh, you know what? Why don't I just
so when you're actually on at the top, it always says return to vision sphere. Return to idea to vision sphere.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, so the problem or the pain point is feeling isolated. Inability to, what's the word here? Not communicate. Being misunderstood. Creates a sense of isolation.
Nice. And I think that's already a really powerful aspect to this here, to find those words in writing, right? Because when you talk about something, it's one thing, but sometimes it feels like conversations can be so fleeting and so non-permanent and just as intangible. So really writing it down, I think, is a good thing here. All right, perfect. Now we have kind of 3 symptom problems outlined, and hopefully we'll find a way to tie them together and then look at some of the root causes that came from them. But before we do that, we're kind of like in problem mode here. We're like, this is difficult, it's intangible, and I can't communicate, and I'm isolated, and maybe even depressed and misunderstood, all these negative things. Now, why don't we go into each one of those and we flip these things into their opposites? So I'm gonna take the last one. That's a good one. So if I click on it, up here at the top, I have violated benefits, needs, and value goals, right? So if I'm having the problem of feeling isolated and being misunderstood, then, well, what would the opposite of that look like? And that's what I'm going to write here when I create a need or value goal. So how would we phrase that? What's the opposite of isolation?
Community.
Community, I like it.
Being not just accepted, but appreciated.
Acceptance, actually appreciation, and being accepted. I'm trying not to make typos. Accepted, is that how you spell it?
2 C's, 2
C's.
C's.
That's what I
There
thought. Perfect. And I think another one, maybe, when I think about isolation, I think about connection as well as the opposite.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Connection.
That's a good point.
Okay, perfect. So now we've kind of created this mental contrast here, right, between our problem that we had here and the value goals and the benefits that we attain when we solve this problem. So if we actually solve our problem of being misunderstood, then as a result, we'll feel connected, we'll feel appreciated and accepted, and we'll feel that we belong as part of a community. In fact, there's another one we could add up here, I think, is the word belonging, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So each of those words, they kind of carry that connotation of, either being a positive word or kind of a negative word. And sometimes it's subjective, but that's kind of what this all ties into here. So absolutely. Let me head back to the sphere. Now we said
that last point, just really quick for the leaders who are listening, being able to fulfill those needs is the way to get your team to innovate for you. They will respond to positive reinforcement on those bases. So if you want especially if you're a small business owner, if you want your employees more innovative, treat their ideas just that way. that will give them the fuel to expand on those ideas and solidify those ideas and bring them up more often.
That's such a good insight. And yeah, absolutely. It's all about that motivational psychology is maybe what it's called. I'm not sure, but exactly right. Getting people to connect with those values and the things that we really want and that we're working towards, right? And I mean, sure, you can pay your team and your staff and everything, but money can't buy connection, for example, right?
Exactly.
Now, Mina, so we've talked about these symptom problems here, right? How we feel and how it's kind of bad. And we can go into each one of those now and again, create that mental contrast of what we really want. Would you say that for those three that you outlined for us here, there's one motive underneath them that kind of summarizes them, kind of like the one core problem that unites them?
Yes. So I would say that the core problem that unites them is the problem that activates the idea initially. So most of our ideas are a response to something. All of the inorganic systems that we're part of were developed in response to something. So I think in this case, generally, the unifying point or the unifying problem would be the core problem with another system. So it will vary from person to person or idea to idea what the actual initiating problem is.
Gotcha. So to make an example, let's say like I have an idea. I think that we should allocate money to a community program in my city, for example. And then maybe the problem that I really see is that actually in my city, people aren't socializing, they aren't coming together, they don't really have something to enjoy themselves in our city. That might be one example. Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
Those are the kinds of problems that I help people solve. Absolutely.
Okay. So how do we describe that in such a way that it's abstract enough to where it catches those things, but also general enough or understandable enough to where people respond to it? So if you had to make an entry here.
I know that with these types of problems, you have to go backwards to go forward. You have to understand all of the aspects like you just illustrated. You may think that you need money for a project, but what it actually is you need to develop a program around socializing, giving people an opportunity and a space to socialize. So you have to go backwards to go forward, but I don't know, we'll have to think about, like, this is the hard part, really think about how to.
I think what really might fit well here is, because you said the main root of these three symptoms is that I see a problem in the world and I would like to solve it because it's dissatisfying to me.
There you go. Absolutely. There is a point of dissatisfaction. And then that way it's even more generic, because it could be dissatisfaction in my house. Like, I hate this wall over here. And so it could be let the kids paint it, or it could be get some art, or it could be, put up a whiteboard. But the activating factor is dissatisfaction.
This is how I'm writing it around right now. There is a point of dissatisfaction in my world. I feel there is a problem in my environment and I don't like it. Is that?
I think that's beautiful.
Awesome. So now as we create this problem right here, this is the one I just had. What we're going to actually do, we said the ones we talked about earlier are symptom problems, right? So we're actually going to connect them right in here. So then we have to say, okay, we talked about isolation, right? And so it should only be a second till the isolation problem comes up. There it is, feeling isolated. So we're going to take this one now and we're going to connect that one in here. So the same problem from earlier, we just made the connection now between those problems. What was the other one? I have an idea, right? I have an idea. And the last one was communication.
Right.
I think it's difficult to communicate them. How did we say it? Intangible.
Yeah, intangibles.
There you go. Intangible things are difficult to communicate. Oh, that's why I couldn't find it, because I made my typo right here, because I'm all nervous about speaking on camera. Okay, cool. Awesome. And then exactly what you said earlier, you actually have to work backwards. So now we identified our problems here. And in fact, we had these things that we talked about, like connection, for example, which should hopefully come up here as well. Exactly. So there's that one. And what was the other one we talked about? Appreciation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciation and being accepted. This still needs to be improved a little bit, and it needs to be made more intuitive, that we can connect these things that we put here easier. But I mean, that's the idea, right? So we connect these concepts into this coherent narrative, into the structure, and we can also hide them again if we want to kind of focus on another area. And just like you described, we have to actually work backwards and look at the root cause, right? Well, what exactly is the problem here, you know, in more specific detail. And then that's where we can actually solve the problem at its root and come up with something that will get rid of all of these symptom problems and help us achieve the goals that we outlined up here in blue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it really gets nitty gritty, huh? That's
Yeah,
where
exactly.
actually it might be a little vague if we come up with a root cause here and try to identify it. But at the same time, if we're looking for solutions, I mean, what would you say? What is your kind of, you know, how do you know you found a solution that actually is viable? What would you say?
So I know that I have found a solution that is viable when it bypasses current power structures.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, one of my first clients was a Somalian refugee. He came here, became a doctor, and wanted to be able to provide medical care in isolated areas in East Africa. His first idea was, I'll start a nonprofit. But you can see that there are already a number of nonprofits who are fundraising and supposed to be servicing the area. So we started looking at the power structures in the area. Why aren't these other versions already successful? There was a whole range of why the current power structures there were making it difficult to be successful. Both governmental power structures, gangland power structures, how people function in their families, power structures based on how women could seek medical care and access. And we had to consider all of those things in order to finally figure out that the best way to provide care in this area is actually to partner physicians with trainees in these areas to teach them how to provide their own care. And then now the resources from organizations that were already funding the area could go to providing tools to people who already knew how to implement the care. So we were able to take a prospectively billions-dollar need and boil it down into something that could service the area for less than $50,000 a year. The internet was donated, still is donated, and he's now servicing 13 small villages in remote Somalia and Ethiopia.
Nice. That's a fantastic example. How that, you know, what you talked about earlier, something that's initially an intangible and difficult idea, you really boil it down to something. Hey, all right, let's do something. Let's actually take action here and there, and that's really going to cause that transformation. So, and that's really what I think too. At the end of the day, a solution always needs to be, it can't just be another idea in the mind. It needs to be actually something where you can be like, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, I'll do this thing. That's
Yes.
a solution. Otherwise, it's like, it's just another vague idea, right? So it needs to be actionable. And the solution itself needs to, like you said, be able to realize those bigger picture ideas, and especially the positive ones that we wanted to achieve in the first place.
But the power of sitting down and looking at solutions is you can explore them. So if you can look around and see there are solutions that are already being implemented, let's look at why they aren't actually serving in the way that they are designed to serve, or that they were hopefully supposed to serve? Why aren't they working? That's a really important part of examining options and opportunities.
I like it. And that's really a good way to kind of, you know, refocus the whole problem. When we started out with, oh, I feel isolated, or it's difficult to communicate my ideas. I have an idea, but it's still intangible and everything. After meditating on that and contemplating it for some time, then we actually come up with, hey, wait a second. I realized that there's a point of dissatisfaction in my world. Now I have to ask myself, the real problem I have to solve here is like, why has this problem not been solved yet?
Yes,
Now,
exactly.
I can't be the only one who's impacted by this. I can't be the only one who thinks it's kind of annoying or, you know, unfavorable, undesirable. So what is the real obstacle here? What's the holdup? And that's why we call it a root cause obstacle, right?
And now this actually, we're getting into vision, because now we're starting to explore how other people are experiencing this problem or the pain points of this problem.
So as you say that, that sounds to me like it could be a tangible action here, and that is to interview others about their experience regarding the problem.
There you
So
go.
that we gather more information.
Yes. And then when it comes to the groups that you want to interview, you have your allies and your immediate audience, because your audience can be broken down into your immediate audience and your adjacent audience. Your adjacent people are people who are watching you because what you're doing is interested, but they're not really bought in. They're comfortable. They don't really care. But your immediate audience are the people that you have to figure out how to communicate to you so that they can participate in your solution. And your allies are people who are already trying to solve the problem, and you want to be able to speak to their pain points around your problem so that they can boost your results.
And that reminds me back to the story that you told earlier from the person in Somalia where you said you were really making this partnership network and connecting with other people around us. And yeah, that's why I'm kind of lost for words. But that to me sounds like another solution, kind of that collaboration there and connecting with other people. How would you phrase that solution to rally up other people or find collaborators or cooperations? How would you say it?
I would say, first of all, those are alliances. So the physicians that work with him to teletrain people in the countries, and the organizers in the villages, those are all allies. Those are all people who were trying to solve this problem, who wanted to solve this problem, but they didn't know how. So helping him helps them serve their own mission.
I like it. I like it. And this really creates win-win situations, right?
This is how you make change quickly.
Nice. Look at that. I like it. I like it, Mina. We
and
started.
This, of course,
go ahead.
It's the foundational philosophy behind the 2K Days project.
Please tell us a little more about it. What are the details on the 2K Days project? What's it look like? Because I know I've been a part of it, and I found it's exactly what we're talking about here, right? A community where we can gather information from other people who are also in the same field and who we can form alliances with.
Exactly.
Tell us more. How do we get involved? What's the next step here for us to do to partner with you on the 2K Days project?
Well, the website is just 2kdaysproject.com. This is a space for liberators, leaders, impact entrepreneurs to come together and see that one, possible is a limiting belief. People are in this space making tremendous gains, solving problems just like we are here in ways that they're not easy to find. These solutions are not easy to find. There's coursework coming up to help you go from idea to vision to system quickly, easily, because quick and easy is what it's going to take. All trying to bring these leaders, people like you, which is why I asked you to come on as a founding member, because you share my passion for solutions. And your approach is very different. Mine is very interpersonal, but you have something to visualize that. And I think we've talked about how powerful visualization is so far. That's why this is so important. But coming together into a space, because that density and being able to find each other is what's keeping us from making, one of the big problems that's keeping so many people from making a significant impact right now. We're just hard to find.
And that's really a good place too, like you said, find more of those people who are interested in creating transformations and bypassing the current power structures.
Yes.
And doing that through connection, and then ultimately resolving all those you know, feelings of isolation and having an idea, but it's difficult to communicate and all of that. Just like we outlined here, we basically did our interview and we shown the structure of how it works, what can be done. And you're a perfect person to do this with, due to your experience. You find those words to put on the things, like what you said here, forming alliances. If you say it like that, now I'm like, oh, of course. Why didn't I think about forming alliances? Duh. Right? It's like, and before we were like, oh, I feel isolated. I have an idea. It's intangible and difficult. But now you're like, all right, form an alliance. Tomorrow, call up some people, you know. So it's really,
exactly,
that's why you are an activist and an activator. You get people going, you get them moving. That's perfect. Mina, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share with someone who's thinking about, you know, leading the world to a better place and solving some of the dissatisfactions and problems they see in the world? Is there any more advice you can give us here to close this off?
I would say, one, cut off anyone who tries to tell you what is and isn't possible. And two, surround yourself with people who are constantly doing the impossible.
Love it. Love it. That's really going to a place where no one has gone before and expanding the frontier and expanding what people think is possible. Love it. Mina, thank you so much. This has been really a valuable episode. I hope people will enjoy it. If you're watching this, leave a comment below with your takeaways. And exciting to do the first time demoing the enolve app here. I hope everybody liked it and look forward to seeing you in the 2K Days project.
Yes, sir. See you there.
Awesome. Take care.